program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the Eau Claire Area School Board. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Please stand. A pledge of allegiance will be offered. Thank you very much. Good evening. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law notification?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let's proceed with a roll call for quorum verification.
Commissioner Nordin.
Here.
Commissioner Bika.
Here.
Commissioner Harder. Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Here.
Commissioner Luganville.
Here.
Commissioner Torres.
Here.
Commissioner Vu.
Here.
Thank you very much. Our first item in the agenda is a public forum. You will have 4 minutes to participate. Provided that there is new information that has not been previously shared at this meeting. We will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor any person connected with the school system in a public forum. We only have one person tonight. That is Mark Goins.
Good evening. My name is Mark Goings. I live at E17450 County Road V in Augusta. Tonight I was prepare for the votes on OPEB. I have a few things that I just want to mention as a point of reflection. The work that we're looking at tonight is from the OPEB committee. And I want to commend the board on using using that type of a system to look for collaborative solutions. Because the feeling of tonight's presentation and potential vote is so much different than the feeling when we were looking at the scenarios back last December. Because in this example, this was your staff having a chance to look at the issues that facing the board and trying to come up with solutions. And that is a style of decision making I hope that the board continues to use. We used this several years ago when we looked at the compensation overhaul, where we, in a relatively short amount of time, changed 50 years of employee contracts and how they got compensated, everything. But we did it with the staff. And as we are working to meet the trust of the community and inspire the minds of our students, keep in mind your staff is a huge part of that, and perhaps the biggest part of meeting that sacred trust. And so the more that you can work with the staff to come up with solutions, because we all realize that this is a tough time for education in our state. But you as a board do not need to do that in isolation. And so thank you for giving the staff a chance to work through that committee to bring some solutions. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move on to our administrative reports. Now it's the turn of Dr. Hardebeck's report. Superintendent.
Thank you. I'd like to review the upcoming school board events. All of these meetings will take place at the administration building. On August 19th, there's a policy and governance meeting at 8:30 a.m. That will be followed later in the day by a school board meeting. On August 20th, we'll have agenda setting at 8 a.m. On August 20th at 4:30 p.m., there will be a meeting of the Eau Claire Virtual School Governance Board. On August 26th, all staff will return to work. And there will be some wellness and back to school activities, and those will happen at each building. And then on August 27th at 1 p.m. there will be a budget development meeting. We are now in August, and we are gearing up for the beginning of the school year, and one of our first events will be the two-day administrative retreat that will take place tomorrow and Wednesday. That will happen here at the administration building as well. And so I'll have some other announcements after the consent agenda, and that concludes my report for tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hardwick. Our next point in the agenda is the board's president's report. I'd like to begin my report by congratulating Dr. Hardwick. She was re-elected in her responsibilities with the Urban Superintendents Association of America. I know that that is a great honor, serving at a national level, so we commend you for your work. Last week, I had the pleasure of going to Madison with Blia Bang and Dr. Jennifer Eady on a training about capacity building to learn how to execute or put in motion a project that was granted funds to the Family Resource Center. We have a commitment with the community and with this particular organization, and I highly commend the initiative, and I think that there are many opportunities for us to collaborate and further that connection, both in terms of curriculum development and also specific services to the parents in our school district. It's basically how to be a good parent. Not that we're going to teach them, but we're going to provide resources for them to reach their full potential as parents. That's all I have to report. Our next point in the agenda is school board committee reports. LEAP committee?
The LEAP committee has not met yet. We don't meet till September.
Thank you. Budget development. Commissioner Harder is not in town, so we don't have a report on that one. Demo and trends. Not met. Policy and governance, that would be me. We met this morning, and we are working on two initiatives to address Policy 662.3 about fund balance, and we are having a very interesting conversation about what is it that constitutes a healthy balance. So we need to draw that line at some point, and that will help our team, our administrative team, to make sound and comfortable decisions. And we are also working on a policy to address student transportation in private vehicles. We're not done yet, so we'll bring that to the board in after our next session. Legislative update?
None at this time.
Very good, thank you very much. So it's time to go for our consent resolution agenda. I will need a motion to approve the items listed here. 6.2, minutes of July 22nd, 2019. 6.3, minutes of closed session, July 22nd, 2019. And Human Resources Employment Report.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. A motion by Commissioner Klinkenhammer. I need a second.
Second.
A second by Dr. Nordin. Those who approve say aye.
Aye.
Those who say no say aye. Those who abstain, same sign. So we've approved the consent resolution agenda. Dr. Hardy.
And with the approval of the consent agenda, you also formally approved the appointment of Paul Uren to be the next principal and the sitting principal of South Middle School. He's already begun his work there. So, Paul, would you please stand up? So Paul has come to us with a distinguished career. He was the Director of Teaching and Learning in the Ellsworth Community School District. He also previously served as principal of a middle school in the southwest Wisconsin communities of Galesville, Ettrick, Trempealeau, as well as the Ellsworth Community School District. And most recently, he was the superintendent of the Ladysmith School District. Paul holds a master's degree in education with an emphasis on professional development and a bachelor's degree in elementary education, both from the University of Wisconsin-River Falls. He also received a superintendent certificate from Winona State University and a director of instruction certificate from Viterbo University. So Paul has strong ties to the Eau Claire community. In addition to having a new grandchild who's living here, two of his children graduated from North High School. And we're looking forward to getting to know you better, and we're looking forward to the leadership that you're going to bring to South Middle School. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then the next announcement that we have is the new principal of Sam Davy Elementary School, and that is Dr. Joe Eisenhuth. Would you stand up? So Joe's a familiar face in the Eau Claire Area School District, having served as the athletic director at North High School since 2012. Prior to joining ECASD, he was the president and chief advancement officer for Regis Catholic Schools from 2008 to 2012. He also served Regis Catholic Schools as an elementary school principal from 2005 to 2008, and from 1997 to 2005, Joe was an elementary teacher and a coach for the Mondovi School District. And then from 1988 to 1997, he was a special education teacher and a coach for the Elmwood School District. Joe holds a doctorate degree in educational leadership from Edgewood College, which he received in 2014. He also is licensed as a superintendent, a director of special education, and a principal, as well as a special education teacher and a regular education teacher. So Joe, you're well known in the community from your work as the AD and assistant principal at at North. I think that many people did not know of your elementary background, so you're in a way going back to your roots, and we look forward to your leadership at Davie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hardebeck. We will now move on to our individually considered resolutions. The first item in this section is approval of the gift from the Ulrich Trust. Last week, we received a very generous donation from the Ulrich Trust in memory, honoring the memory of two very distinguished educators in our community. That is supposed to be used according to their will, and that is to serve the children of our community. That will be used to install a new athletic track and additional facilities around that track. We received a check in the amount of $50,000. The total amount of the gift is $250,000. And now that you've had the opportunity to read the donor's agreement, we need to approve it. And since it is receiving a donation of money, we will do a roll call for such a thing.
I move approval of the gift.
And we
I'll
need a second.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes, I wondered if we were having any discussion. That's okay.
Would you like to raise a question?
I think I'd like to just repeat something that I said at the very end of last meeting, that it's my hope that we consider this donation in the context of the larger board commitment for equity in athletics and facilities at all schools. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, if I make the suggestion that we might use the district's equity committee structure to form a review committee that would look at athletics and facilities at all schools for the purpose of informing our comprehensive plan, our capital plan.
Thank you very much. We will do so.
so Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And we will be moving to the next item, which is the OPEB committee recommendations.
Good evening, school board members. Dan Wilson is one of the OPEB committee members and has agreed to walk through the committee recommendations with the board as we are voting on them. And so he's here tonight to present with me. I think most of you will recognize him. He's a special ed teacher at Memorial. And we value his expertise on the committee as well. And so we were asked if he could present with us, and so he's here tonight. I'm going to go through the first couple of slides that are just the reminders, and then we thought we would give the board an opportunity to vote on each of the items individually and give you some time to discuss them and see what that might look like. So just a reminder to the board that the charge the board gave the committee was for them to review, study, and discuss OPEB options, including the stipends, health and dental insurance rates and plans, married couple benefits, and coverage for single-family Employee Plus plans. The ad hoc OPEB committee shall meet on an as-needed basis and provide a report to the full board by June 3rd with recommendations for board approval. As a reminder, these were the items that the committee discussed, and these were what were lined out in the committee charge. Married couple health insurance benefit, the committee recommended no changes. The stipend benefit, the committee recommended no changes. Retirement health and dental coverage options for retirees, we'll talk about that at item number 6. Previous OPEB scenarios, A, B, C, and B1 that the board has seen and discussed for several months, no change. And then additional items to consider and reflect on, and that's the ranking that we talked about last time and you will be discussing further tonight. Just a reminder on the previous OPEB scenarios, the highlight that some of the following ranked items only would apply if the board would choose to make changes to the current OPEB system. This morning I was asked to kind of put together for the full board the 9 items and putting them together. What kind of a fiscal impact would that have if the board chose to vote on all of these? That task is a little easier said than done because some of them we aren't sure if the board is going to move forward with and what that would look like. And that's specifically related to the OPEB scenarios and potential changes. But what I can tell you is that this information was shared with you last board meeting. And so item number 1, which you will be reviewing, would be shifting the HRA contribution date. And we estimate that would save annually between $0 and $36,000. Earning the HRA like married couples instead of the automatic contribution, that's currently about a $2 million expense to the district. And so the $2 million is the high number because we know that employees are engaged and they're going to participate in that. And so it's more realistically about a $50,000 difference to the budget. No HRA contribution for retirees after the year after they retire would range between 0 and 150,000. That 150,000 has been what we've been paying the last 3 years. Grandfather based upon meeting the eligibility instead of a fixed date. Again, we can't put a value on that because that would be related to OPEB scenario changes that were reviewed earlier with the board, and we can't measure that at this time. Number 5, locking the insurance rate at year of retirement instead of the year after. And so we used a 5-year average. Last time we shared with you, we estimated a cost savings of about $146,000 over 5 years. And so that's why the number here is reflected at $29,354. We just took that 5-year average and said approximately what would we get per year. Number 6, the modification of the cap based upon individual needs. If you remember, that talks about having the plan that you need throughout the course of retirement. So maybe I retire with a family plan, but in 2 years I need an employee plus. In a few more years we might need a single. Because we don't have all of the information on the current retirees, it's tough for us to project exactly how much savings there would be. Number 7 and 8 really kind of go together, and that was talking about locking in the insurance rate increase at 5% and 3%. And you can see the 5%, the maximum amount we would save, we estimated to be just over $14,000. And if it was locked at 3%, we estimated about $70,000. And then number 9, again, is grandfathering based upon years of service instead of age and years of service. And again, we can't predict that because that would require changes to the OPEB scenarios that the board has looked at. So when we add the things that we know and can reasonably estimate, we are looking at a cost savings range of 0 to about $350,000, and we wanted to share that with the board tonight. Any questions on that slide?
It's less of a question, but just one of the things that I think is interesting about this is just for 1 year, and when we talked about initially with the changes to OPEB, it was over 30 years that it was projecting. So I think, we're certainly looking at much higher over 30 years, and I think it's important for board members to know that too.
Sure.
It's hard to predict, obviously, what that would look like, but
Correct.
it's even more savings for us.
Right. Okay.
Okay, and I know she flew through those because now I'm on to take you a little bit more in depth through each of the options as we go through them. So for the first option was shift the HRA contribution date. Currently right now, when you're employed as of July 1st, you get your HRA contribution put in as of July 1st. Today's a good example. So if someone put in their resignation today, they've already received their July 1st HRA contribution, and now that person needs to be rehired. That position needs to be rehired before the start of the school year, and that new person would also get their HRA contribution. So what this does by shifting the date farther away from July 1st is those people that change jobs or retire later in the summer, we don't get double hit with the HRA payments. So by moving these a little bit later, the committee recommended to September 1st, but you guys could pick any date that you wanted. We were going with the September 1st option, that their HRA contributions are made September 1st. That way we eliminate the double payments. One of the concerns is, well, what if somebody has a medical expense July 3rd and they don't have the HRA contribution in there? I would think most medical facilities, if you were to call, you got your bill middle August, because it happened in July, you get your bill mid-August, and you say, look, my employer is putting my HRA contribution in September 1st, they should work with you. So we didn't think it would be that big of a financial burden for somebody for those 2 months of cost that could be incurred. You probably wouldn't have to pay the bill, no guarantees, but you probably wouldn't have to pay the bill until September 1st after you got your HRA contribution anyways. So that's the background and history on that. Any questions on the process of what this one means? Okay. So by shifting the HRA contribution from July to, we left it open, because you guys in your motion can come up with what date you want to have that shifted to. And then we also left the year open too. The committee recommended 2020, which would be next year. So we're already into this year. We can't do it for 19, but 2020, the committee kind of really felt that this doesn't really have an adverse effect on employees at all. We're still as an employee, we're still getting our HRA contribution, we just have to wait a little bit longer for it, but not adversely. So that's the timeline the committee came up with. And so then, any discussion on this? And we have one of these slides after every item to kind of prompt you guys for discussion, for a motion on that one item, and then to take the vote on.
Any discussion about the item 1?
I'm just curious, I know you left the date open, but did your committee have a consensus as far as moving it from July to September?
September was
September 1st? Or?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot in depth about September. I think from an administrative standpoint, to say a specific date, that can be a challenge each year. And so I think saying in the month of September or by September, whatever, would be a little bit easier for us on the payroll side because that's who processes it. But no, I think September, in that early September range, because the hiring is done and people are back to work by that point, was what was discussed.
Any other question or commentary? Seeing none, then I would like to receive a motion to adopt this recommendation.
I move that we shift the HRA contribution date from July to September, starting July 1st, 2020.
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Luganville and second by Dr. Nordin. Let's have a roll call to vote.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. It has passed.
Okay, so our next option we have is for everybody to earn the HRA like ECASD married couples do instead of an automatic contribution. So that's the overreaching thought, and where that comes from is right now employees earn a premium reduction by meeting their wellness initiatives or their wellness qualifications. Married couples in the district receive 100% of their premium covered by having 2 employees in the district, so therefore there would be no way to reduce our premium. So a few years ago we came up with, well, instead of reducing premiums, what if their HRA contributions were tied to it instead of a reduction in premiums? And Abby, I'll let her speak a little bit more as to what the problems happen with the IRS and stuff. When you do a premium reduction, the money can't be used as easily. So I'll let you address that a little bit.
There's very specific things that you can use those funds for when it's a premium share reduction. We have chosen wellness because that's one of the items. And then I think the other thing that those funds can be used for is to pay administrative expenses for your TPAs that monitor like your flex plan and things like that. And so because those costs are less than the premium share reduction, there's some funds that our hands are tied on what we can use for, so we're looking for opportunities to use those. By having it be part of earning your HRA, that provides flexibility for the district because those funds are just not spent on the HRA contribution and they can be reallocated to a program or a different cost that gives us more flexibility. So it's really just providing opportunity to have more flexibility in the use of those funds instead of our hands being tied to only using it for those very few specific things that are allowed by the IRS.
So again, here's the timeline the committee had talked about was today we're waiting for a board decision. September already we start communicating if this were to happen, because if you guys vote this through and it has to happen, as of January 1st, the new stipulations, the employees need to be aware that the new wellness things effective January 1st would be affecting their 2021 HRA payment. Yeah, 2021 HRA payment. So you had, because the wellness initiatives, the wellness things are for a calendar year, so it'd be for the year of 2020. So there would be no impact until 2021, but employees would need to be made aware of it before January 1st of this year that it was changing a little bit.
Discussion about this recommendation.
I just have a question.
Question, Commissioner Luginbill.
Thank you. I'm just curious about I know this kind of goes into this is about the wellness piece. I know there were issues with the technology around the wellness, some of the wellness platforms or the online site. I'm just curious if that was dealt with when there were those complaints, or if they're still working on that, or I just remember when we received messages about that.
Yeah, I think that was a couple of years ago, and
Okay.
we did do some things, and so there's a different platform now.
It's a
And
new platform. Okay.
there's a new platform, and I haven't received any complaints. Kay, have you? No. So I think we're done.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have just one.
Dr. Nordin.
Just to be clear, the 4 X's on your previous slide, the committee's recommendation is the 2021 fiscal year, to fill in that blank there? Starting fiscal year 2021? Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then we would need a motion that proposes earn HRA like ECAs in married couples instead of automatic contribution starting fiscal year 2021 contribution.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Nordin and second by Dr. Bika. Let's do a roll call for vote.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes?
Commissioner Bika.
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luginbill,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres.
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Thank you. The motion carries. Next item.
Okay, a lot of HRA contribution things happening with these, but this one is, current practice is the year after you retire, that next HRA contribution is made for you. So if I retire as a teacher, I put in my retirement this March, as of July 1st, I still got an HRA contribution. It was the year after. If someone puts in their retirement now, July 1st of next year, they would, current practice, get one more HRA contribution based on current practice. What this is saying is that the year you retire is the last HRA contribution you would get. So you no longer get one more after you retire. Your last year of employment, your last year of being an active employee, because this is an active employee benefit, so your last year of being an active employee would be the last year you get your HRA contribution. So again, so we don't affect people that this is a big deal for them. They maybe would have retired this year had they known. Committee's recommending that we give one more year of notice, basically, so anybody that retires in the next year retires with what they thought they were getting, and then take effect that for the following year after that, for July of 2021. Actually, it'd be now September of 2021.
Discussions about this recommendation or questions?
Just a question. So
Commissioner Gu.
have we discovered what was the original reason for having what we had before?
I think it goes, from my history of looking through negotiations and things, I think it goes back to one of the other items that you're going to get to, is that insurance premiums, your OPEB was also leveled on the insurance premiums of the following year. So if you were using that insurance premiums, the HRA contribution fell right in line. I mean, to me, those two kind of fit hand in hand. If you're looking at next year's insurance, you're probably looking at next year's HRA, because HRA and insurance kind of go hand in hand. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked into the records of negotiations of where this has happened or how it came into decay. Do you remember anything about where or when this came into place?
Not specifically like you, but my assumption, like yours, would be that it ties into being able to select whatever premium was more favorable to the employee, either the current year or the year of which your retirement starts, because I believe, like you, that they go hand in hand.
No more questions? Then I would receive a motion to discontinue HRA contribution for retiree year after retirement starting July 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Motion moved by Commissioner Luganville, and I'd like a second.
Second.
Second, Dr. Nordin. Thank you. Let's do a roll call for voting.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bica,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Wu.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. Next item.
Okay, just to clarify, this proposal came out of the conversations with the current system of how OPEB is given to the staff and deals with the A, B, C, and B1 scenarios that were presented previously. It still comes forward that if any system is put in place that has grandfathering, the grandfathering should be based on meeting eligibility instead of a fixed date. So in other words, to put this in layman's term, if I was eligible to retire next year, I'm 55 with 25 years experience, and some change comes in that says if you don't retire by that date, next year we're changing, it would force me out at that point to lock in the benefits that I have worked my career thinking ahead. This is saying, well, Dan wants to work 3 more years after that change happens. He met the eligibility back here, but he wants to work 3 more years and then retire with the benefits that he's already earned. Currently, that's not the system. Currently, with conversations with A, B, C, and B1, it would have been you had to retire by the 3-year or 5-year grandfathering that was being proposed, or you lost your old benefits and had to take the new. So the conversation was, well, if I've met my eligibility, I should be eligible no matter when I retire. So did I butcher that, or any questions on that? People understanding what I'm trying to say? Is instead of saying you have to retire July 1st of 2021, if I've met the eligibility by then, I could go 3 more years and still get the benefits that I've earned.
Questions?
Again, kind of with the last one, this could affect some people that were planning on retiring. They could have gone this year. So 1 more year of notice that we kind of leave this open. Depends on, right now, without A, B, C, and B1 on the table, there's really no implementation date needed because those aren't on the table right now. So, I mean, it would basically kind of be setting a thought process that if something were to come into play, that the board has made a recommendation to base it on eligibility rather than a specific date.
Setting a parameter for the
Right.
future.
Right.
Okay.
Would there be any limits to what date would be? What date that would be?
The committee did not talk about an end date. You meaning like you'd have 5 years to retire or 8 years to retire? Is that what you're meaning by dates? The committee did not discuss an end date. If I'm eligible at 55 and want to work to 70, well, I'm past the 65, so things really don't matter anyways. But if I wanted to go to 64, I mean, really, there's only a 9-year window that it applies to, because if I retire at 65, I'm into Medicare eligibility, and OPEB doesn't pay for that anyway. So it'd be, I guess it would be to the Medicare window.
Depending upon your age
Oh.
and your position,
Yeah.
stipends would still apply,
Oh, okay.
which is
Yeah.
a piece of it, but
Yep.
not a significant piece.
Did you guys hear what Ms. Johnson added?
Yeah, and that's why I'm a little curious if we vote on this now without a level of specificity around some of those questions. So I would move that we table this item and consider it when the board considers OPEB changes in the future.
Other commentaries? or questions? Do you agree on tabling this item until future consideration of OPEB changes?
Do we need a second? I'll second it. Did you make the
Yeah.
motion, Joe? I'll second.
Okay, so let's do a roll call to vote.
Commissioner Nordine,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes,
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
thank you. We are tabling this item for further consideration. Next item.
Okay, the next item is the one I was talking about that we're going to get to, is that locking insurance rate at the year of retirement rather instead of the year after. This was what we talked about with the HRA. Currently, way back when it was you could choose the better. If insurance happened to go down, you could have chose the year you retired or the following year. And then somewhere along the way it got changed now that you get the year after. You don't have the choice anymore, right, Kay?
No, it is.
There still is a choice? Okay. So on the books, it still is a choice. You get your current year or the following year. What we all know what insurance has been doing lately, that you're going to take the following year because it's a higher premium. So what shows here is our premium costs, how they've increased over the last 5 years. So what this is saying now, again, is if 2019-20 is going to be my last year of teaching, the insurance rates for 2019-20 are what I lock in at for my OPEB benefits, rather than the 2021 rate, which is an option currently. So again, because this would affect people that could have retired this year, the committee's recommendation was to make it effective July of 2021, so that people retiring next year still would be able to pick the years after retire, or their insurance rates for the year after they retired.
Let's open it for discussion. Questions? This one seems pretty clear. Let's do a roll call for vote. I'm sorry, I'm stepping ahead. I need a motion to lock insurance rate cap at year of retirement instead of year after starting July 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Motion moved by Dr. Nordine and second by Dr. Bika. Let's do a roll call.
Commissioner Nordine,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes,
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
thank you very much. The motion carries. Next item, please.
Okay, option number 6, and this is the one that when Ms. Johnson was going through the budget thing, she said we'd get to option 6. It talks about, this is probably one that has the most significant change to OPEB itself as far as the benefits that an employee would receive. Currently, the example, if there's a 55-year-old retiree has a family plan with a 24-year-old dependent, 2 years into the 10-year benefit, that dependent comes off the plan due to age restrictions. The retiree currently would maintain the family plan benefit till they hit Medicare age. So 10 years of family plan. What this proposal is we make a modification based on that employee's need. So in 2 years worth of time, that dependent is no longer on the family plan. That employee would move down to an employee plus, which covers them and their spouse. And then that's what's covered out through the end. All right, so you basically would have a calculator sheet to sit down with a person that's getting ready to retire. You figure out how long they need the family plan, how long they need the employee plus plan, and you might even drop down to a single plan for a year or two at the end. You'd have a calculating sheet to figure that out, and then their OPEB payments would be based on that rather than what plan you have when you retire. This has an impact to the employees, but the committee felt that the impact to the employees of this was a little bit more manageable than the A, B, C, and B1 scenarios that we're going through. This one treats people more evenly with what they need. It's what your need is to get you to Medicare eligibility age, and this addresses that. So here's that example. In the current plan, a 10-year benefit would be, a family plan would be $202,000 over 10 years, spread out over 10 years. This is, they get family plan for 2 years, employee plus plan for 8 years, comes in at $172,000, so that's a savings just on that single employee of $30,000. So again, because of the impact it has on employees that could have retired this year or are planning on retiring, we're looking at the recommended date of being 2021 to give people time to retire next year if they're not in favor of having this be applied to them, if they met the eligibility.
Thank you very much. Let's open up for discussion. Any questions or commentaries? Hearing none, I'll receive a motion to modify the retiree insurance cap based on individuals' actual need starting July 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Luganville,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Klinkhammer. Let's do a roll call.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bica,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. The motion carries. Next item.
Okay, the next two items are actually combined, 7 and 8, because they're exactly the same, just the percentage is different. Budget Development reviewed these options before and decided it didn't meet their goal for cost savings. You can see with the 3% increase and a 5% increase. Now, when the OPEB committee talked about these, they were in relation to the current OPEB system, which with the last vote you just changed. So these were related to the current OPEB system of locking in. So that dollar amounts up there are with the old system that we had before. And so locking in these rates will still have an impact, but these numbers on here are for the system that you just changed with the last vote. So just to make that clear. What this means is if insurance rates were to increase 7-8% annually, what your OPEB liability for the district would only increase by 3 or 5% based on what it does. And so what that does is it adds predictability. We could long range predict here's our OPEB cost in 10 years because we know it's only going to be a 5% increase. So I keep hitting the microphone. 5% increase for the next 10 years. I'm not sure how these fit in now with the vote you just did on number 6. So.
Discussions? Questions?
I have a question.
Dr. Bica?
Can you share a little bit more of the committee's conversation about the 3 versus 5%? Just the different issues you considered with one option versus the other?
Well, I mean, it comes down to cost savings. When you look at the 3% cost savings, from your standpoint, the board standpoint, that's a much better option. From the employee standpoint, that's a bigger significant change as far as what you were planning on getting or thinking you were going to get to what would actually be there if you locked in at a 3% raise. Or not raise, a 3% increase of the OPEB options. I don't know, I'm not exactly sure how we ended up at 3 and 5 rather than 2 and 6 or whatever. It just, that the conversation came around, well, here's a lower option with bigger savings and here's a more manageable option at 5%, because industry standard is about 8%, isn't it, for insurance increase. So even though it's not a huge savings, it's a savings, but yet the biggest point of it is it adds that predictability of you can long range plan it.
More questions?
ask another question?
Yeah.
Do you think, given just this vote on the item number 6, rank number 6, do you think the committee would want more conversation now about number 7?
Those two were never linked in committee conversation. When we came up with the 9, it was these 9, and we never, to my recollection, we never talked about how 8 would affect 6 if 6 went through. So the committee has not had a conversation about how either of these would affect 6 that you just voted in favor of. So we have not had a conversation, and I would assume the committee would like to have maybe a conversation about that. That's just me personally being on the committee. I personally don't want to link the two when there was no link ever made in conversation. Does that make sense?
I want to add
Yep.
something as well. So I think the other thing to think about as the committee talked about, number 6 was about the plan that you need, where 7 and 8 are about the cost of the plan. So I think there's some segregation. And they're somewhat related, but they're also somewhat segregated. And I don't think, I mean, Dan's absolutely right. All of these were talked about individually. It wasn't about, well, if the board picks this, then what about this? That conversation didn't happen.
I have one question.
Dr. Nordine?
Just to confirm, with the, reducing the plan to the one that the retirees need, I speculate then that the savings would be just a little bit lower because we wouldn't be paying for a 5% or a 3% increase on a higher cost plan. But they would still be there, but those numbers would be somewhat lower. Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, these are estimated, based upon the health insurance plans and looking at medical trend of more in that 7 to 8% range. And so, yeah, I would say it was really hard for us to predict, what would it be, because we didn't have all of the data of when, who has spouses, who's going out with what plans, and so the actuary would help us with that. But yeah, I would think these numbers would be less based upon looking at the actual data of what is the plan they need instead of that same plan for their years.
Thank you.
So we would need a motion to insurance rate increase not to exceed 3% or insurance rate to increase not to exceed 5%. In either case, it will be from beginning 2024, right?
The date that came up there was when the committee was asked to rank these, we were also asked to put a projected start date of when we thought, and so that's kind of the collective common number that came up. I'm not sure exactly the significance of 2024 on this one. It's just what, through the ranking system that we use, that tended to be the one that came out, so.
So, we need a motion. Or not? Do you think we need real numbers?
I know that they just talked about not wanting to pair it with the previous decision, but we would have a better idea of the exact savings of each based in the new plan, correct? Or a better
Estimation.
A better estimation, or would it be really hard to estimate?
I would have to have the actuaries do that because that's not something that I'm capable of doing. And so we could do it. I would have to work with them on timeline and data gathering because we currently don't keep all of the birth dates of children and spouses and things like that. And so we could do it. I just think that there would be a length of time involved.
I think I think it might make sense to wait until we have that from the actuary, but I'm not sure what others feel.
One of the things that I would recommend is we're due to have a new actuarial study in, I believe it's next year.
Oh.
And so personally, I think it might make sense because we would, with that change, you would have to provide all of that data anyway, and then we're not incurring additional fees to work with the actuary outside of the time that we would normally have a study done anyways. So just one more thing to think about.
I think it makes sense to move it to something that they work on, and then since since you would look at a proposed recommended implementation of 2024 anyways, we would still have time and have a little more real numbers to work with. So I'll move that we table that one for further consideration after work with the actuaries.
And a second?
Could I ask, this probably doesn't make a big difference, but it's a question.
Dr. Vika?
I'm sure you would think to do this anyway, but given the way that the amounts break between 3% and 5%, would you include would you get a range in there? I think you would end up doing this anyway, but not just consider those two, but.
I think that that would be something that we would consider, next steps from the board, what are the next steps? So here's what's been done. Are you going to continue to look at OPEB? And I think that would be part of the broader conversation. And we could definitely have them look at, okay, here's some potential options if you're still looking to make changes to OPEB. We could look at those specifically, as well as things we've looked at in the past, or look for new recommendations from them as well.
Did we have a second? We need a second to table the issue. So we will not adopt this recommendation. We'll just wait for the next actuarial study that will bring us a more realistic estimation.
That was the motion.
Yeah. Motion to table.
Did it die for lack of a second?
No one seconded.
No one second? Well, I'm asking if there's a second.
Was it just that you wanted something connecting it to that particular study rather than leaving it open-ended, or?
No, it was just the projected savings will get a more accurate projection if this is included in the next actuarial study based off of the change that we just made prior to this item.
I think I'm just hung up in the Roberts rules of it, because I don't know if it's to say it's tabled it or that it's you want it connected to that actuarial study.
Well, they complement each other. The understanding is that we're not asking for a special actuarial study. We're just going to wait to the cycle, and we'll have the results from there. So we just need to wait. So we will not vote to approve this recommendation. We're just going to table it and wait. And for that, I need a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So let's do a roll call.
Question about it.
Yeah, Dr. Rodin?
Just based on with the committee, could we still, if we wait until 2020, Abby, when you're saying they're going to do the study and then it comes back in 2020, would the committee still support enacting it in 2024? That takes, potentially a year off of the communication time, or would they want to move it back to 2025 at that point?
Again, I can't really speak for the committee, but we don't know where the 2024 came from how that date was picked in the first place. So, I mean,
maybe I'll take that as the answer then. Thank you.
I mean, I just think there has to be some communication time, and that was
Sure.
that was common throughout all these. Is there has to be communication time. There has to be a time for an employee that this would adversely affect to go out before it affected them, if they were eligible to go out before it affected them. So the 2024, again, I'm not sure where that day exactly came from.
Thank you. It might be even earlier than 2024. Yeah. So let's do a roll call to table 7 and 8.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Vika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganbill,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres.
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. The motions carry.
Okay, number 9. Number 9 also deals with grandfathering. In the current proposed OPEB scenarios, A, B, C, and B1, the old ones that were the scenarios, the 3- and 5-year grandfather affected only people that would have become eligible if they had, for teachers. Now, each employee group has a little bit different thing, and I can only speak to the teachers. If you were 55 with 25 years experience in the district, you were eligible, okay? And what this is saying is, Somebody may be 25 years in the district and only be 49, and with a 3 or 5 year grandfathering, they're left out, even though they have the same amount of experience as the person next to them that happens to be 50 and fit within that grandfathering. So this came out to be, let's recognize experience, let's recognize time in the district rather than putting the two together. So that's the impetus behind this one. And so, again, I'm not sure where this fits now with all the other changes that have come through tonight, but this was, and this is only last because when, as a committee, we were asked to rank them, and this came in as the bottom ranking using median scores out of all of them. So there's no, they weren't hand-selected to be in this order. They're in this order because of how they were ranked. So this one just, again, falls, and that's what it talks about with that grandfathering.
So consistent with item rank number 4, I would move that we postpone, table this until it's determined if further changes will be made to OPEB.
Second.
Motion to table, Dr. Bika, and second by Commissioner Luganville.
Commissioner Nordin,
Yes.
Commissioner Bika,
Yes.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Commissioner Luganville,
Yes.
Commissioner Torres,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. The motion carries.
Okay.
Next steps. Thank you very much, Dan Wilson and Abby Johnson, for leading us in this process. And we appreciate your contribution. I know that this has been a lot of work, and we do appreciate it. We encourage you to continue gathering and thinking in additional ways to help us reduce the deficit. And looking forward to hearing more of your ideas, more of your good ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item in the agenda is a mentor program.
Good evening. We're going to spend a little bit of time to give you an update on the mentor program. We have finished now 2 years of the program. The program design in its first year was new teachers to the district, and then the plan was for them to stay in the program for 2 years. So this past school year finished their second year. So it was the first cohort that went through for 2 years. And so the group this coming year will now be our second group finishing a second year of their cohort, and then beginning our third team is beginning as well. So we have these overlapping groups. The old program used to be a one-year program, and we did several things. We created some documents, and we'll share that with you to provide some structure for the mentor program to teachers, to the mentors and the mentees. We also streamlined the payment process. We found that the paperwork and the way people got compensated for their time was a little clunky. And now they have a much more automated process where things show up in their inbox. There's a little bit of just clicking, and there's a workflow that passes things on to their supervising administrator to make sure that compensation takes place. The program has lots of alignments to our strategic plan, and really we usually tend to work our way from the top down. This is from the bottom up, and really the focus right now is on high quality staff, ensuring that our staff have the support to begin their careers in the Eau Claire Area School District. It is also creates a collaborative culture between the mentor and the mentee, which hopefully you'll hear about when you hear from one of our pairs coming up soon. And really then that academic achievement and the student social emotional growth is really then sustained through the support of the staff development. You've seen some of this before. This was the research leading up to our developing of the program. So when we instituted the new program, we really looked at the research that really focused on some meta-analysis of 15 empirical studies, really looked at the research that beginning teachers who participated, their students performed better. We don't have a big enough bank yet of data. The first group that just got done, their data is embargoed anyway, so hopefully we will be able to start to look at the data. But the problem that we have is we don't have a control group because they've all gone through that and the testing has changed since. But we're going to try to look at a way, hopefully in the future, where we can do some tracking of the performance of students that work with our new mentees. The other big piece is the teacher commitment and retention. And the retention rate in the district, well, actually the turnover rate, which is the rate of retirees and resignations, in the last 5 years has averaged right around 8.5%. The last couple of years, that is a little bit less, 8.25%. Those that were in the mentee program, their retention rate is 94% or 6% turnover. So it's a little bit better for the group that's in the program. Additionally, we emphasize using best practices, and this provides an opportunity for that. We show you a sample of the curriculum, is to really to reinforce best practices taking place in the classroom, especially when teachers are in the beginning of their careers or the beginning of their career with the district. Really trying to reinforce those opportunities for district or for the mentees to develop their own skills. But this is also an opportunity, as anyone who knows who has ever taught anyone, it's an opportunity for professional development for the mentor as well. Because any time that you're in that sort of a role, we know that there's an advantage not just to the mentee, but the mentor as well. So the program does come at a cost. So if you are, you receive each month from August through June, up to 8 hours of time is compensated at $100 for the mentor and another $100 for the mentee for meeting. So there's 11 months, and then you take the number of mentors and mentees, and then do the math. And so our costs the first year were lower because we didn't have as many mentors and mentees. If you remember our second year, we had a delay before we made that approval, so there was a little bit of confusion. So we're really not sure if that number would have been higher or not had we had a little bit more certainty in that. So the highest the number could be would be $210,000. Typically comes in a little bit below because people's schedules, and hopefully we'll get to hear that case study as to whether or not they were able to meet each of the 11 months. One of the harder ones is August. They could already start meeting this month, but the new people to the district, we don't have everyone in-house, and it's really a tight window in late August to try to have that first meeting. And then about in June is another time that they don't always take advantage of that opportunity because, and if it was anything like last year, I think everyone was pretty much ready for that year to be done. So we surveyed them mid-year. We've surveyed the last couple of years in terms of the program. We get a lot from the mentors, we get a lot of strong feedback. And these are 90%, we're scoring this either excellent, good to fair. And so we asked them data about the value of the program and if they agreed the program had quality to it. And some of the themes that we see, and we saw some of them, they were a little bit different than last year, but we tend to see a lot about relationships and developing that support system and an opportunity to develop communication with their colleague. The mentees, numbers are still pretty strong and pretty consistent again with last year, a little bit lower. And again, you can see some of the themes that we saw in their responses as well regarding, again, relationships is always one of the stronger one in communications. But of course, the one that gets to the first one that we saw most often is they get timely feedback. This is not meant for you to read through this, it's just a sample. If you go to the district's website, www.ecsd.us/mentor, you'll go to the mentor site. There's a bunch of resources on there, and the first button that we have on there has a document that gives you a lot of program structure, and in there we have sample topics for the mentor and mentee to consider. It is not meant to be all-inclusive, it's not meant to be a checklist of things they need to do, but you can see some of the things that the team that put this together put in place to structure those conversations, and any one of these could take quite a bit of time. So the mentor and mentee have a choice upon what they choose to work on during their time, but this is just a sample of this, and we have samples like this for each of the months over both of the years. So I thought you'd like to hear from a pair. So Amanda Judnick has just completed her second year working with Lisa Johnson as a mentor. So they're going to come up each and share their story about their experience in the program over the last 2 years. They were sharing this picture just before the board meeting, which did not give me enough time to somehow get the picture to the PowerPoint, because they found, as time went on too, that they started to dress alike as well. So it had that much of an impact in terms of their, and they said they claimed it was not that they even planned it, that they just got to be thinking in a similar manner. So I'll let Amanda start.
Hi, I'm Amanda Judnick. I teach 5th grade at Robbins. I apologize for any coughing or being a little under the weather. I just completed my 2nd year teaching 5th grade at Robbins Elementary. I've been working very closely with Lisa Johnson. Obviously, you consider the mentee's perspective when you can, as being like the most advantageous with the mentor program, but I think over the course of the 2 years, we've found it to be a mutually beneficial relationship, and we've found that this year we've come to each other as often as last year I would come to her. I'd say there are many advantages as the mentee for this pairing, especially coming in as a new educator. I just had graduated from UW-Eau Claire. It's a very overwhelming profession, and to start your first year teaching in a elementary classroom where you're teaching all subjects, it can be highly demanding and overwhelming. So it was nice to just have Lisa as that go-to person. She welcomed me as soon as I got to meet her during my orientation, and she welcomed me as soon as I got to the school, kind of showed me the ropes, and welcomed me into even in that 5th grade position. So it was nice to not even question, like, who do I go to for things. Lisa and I work together on lesson planning. I can come to her for content questions, curriculum questions. I can't even count how many times I'd run into her with the FOSS kit and say, I don't know how to set this up, can you just show me? Or she'd do a run through. And with other subjects as well. It was nice to have someone to bounce ideas off for classroom management, especially in that very first year, but I found even this year, you know, you just have that unique student concern or parent concern, and it was nice to have someone with experience to go to for that. And other student behaviors, educator effectiveness, and some of our My Learning Plan things. It was nice to go meet with Lisa and collaborate about those items, being new to the district and being new to those evaluations. As well as I took on some extracurricular activities, so it was nice to be able to come to her for things like that. As a mentee, it's nice to be able to rely on my mentor. We've done a lot together in the last 2 years. We've developed assessments that we can both use. It's very nice that we teach the same things, because everything that we do together is mutually beneficial. And I know that James mentioned the support system, and she really has become my support system. Everyone on my team is very welcoming, but it's really nice to just have that one person that I know is always there. We meet many more hours than 8 hours a month. We do a lot of our meeting before and after school. I know I can grab her at any time, and I know we've both run into each other's classrooms during the school day in a pinch. So, you know, it's nice to have that person to go to, and I've really valued this experience, and I know that we'll continue this relationship even beyond our 2-year mentoring.
And I'm Lisa Johnson. You know, she also even moved into my neighborhood, so we have frequent evening walks, and now we've even been tubing this summer a little bit down in Eau Claire, so she's getting a lot of mentor time. No, just kidding. So when I was asked to do this a couple years ago, I was a little apprehensive from past experiences, but I have to say I'm really been impressed with the restructuring of this program. I think the trainings, the organization, the support has been really well thought out and really beneficial. So that's been very nice. Like Amanda said a little bit, it's kind of been beneficial for me as well as a teacher. I think it's kind of re-energized, helps you reflect on your own teaching and the best practices. It gets you, you know, back into kind of really evaluating what you're doing, and then that valuable discourse about teaching and learning and students. It's really helped me as a teacher as well. So I get to share a little bit of my knowledge in that, but I'm also getting new ideas and new experiences and coming up with new things that is very motivating. And so it's been very fun. It's been a great 2 years. I know that we'll continue to keep feeding off each other. It has been really nice too, because she's just literally across the hall. So that's nice. So gaining new perspectives, and it always ultimately benefits the students, and that's why we're here. So thanks for that opportunity.
Do you have any questions
I'd just like to know if there's plans to follow the mentees for their retention rates kind of more longitudinally. It sounds like it's had an excellent effect for new teachers. It's the sort of thing that I wish I would have had when I was teaching. And I'd be interested to see if those benefits continue to hold, you know, over 5 years or longer.
Yeah, we will continue to collect data on the group. Additionally, I know HR, when they do that's one of their selling points as well, is the program. So it's really important for us to be able to be concrete in what we're sharing with other potential hires.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If there are no further questions or
Oh, yeah, do you have
commentaries.
to do your, public? All right.
Questions from the public? No? We thank you for your leadership in this program. We can move to the next item in the agenda is Family Engagement Survey results.
All right. Excuse me. So we completed our 6th family engagement survey this spring. The survey last year was our first, the year before this spring, was our first year of trying to move that survey into the February parent-teacher conferences as a kickoff to try to get more engagement into the families to start taking the survey. We typically had been around, our high point had been about 1,900 or so families. We saw that drop back a year ago to about 1,800 families, and actually this past year we were around 1,600 families, so we've had a bit of a drop. Some of the feedback we got leading into this survey was the survey's long. So we tried to trim the survey, and we tried to convince people that it was shorter, but I think it's going to take us a little bit to help people believe that it really is a bit shorter. Some of the feedback we're also getting too is that it may be time to maybe take a break on the survey after this year and possibly look at focus groups next year. It's one of our strategies that can still get some of the feedback and allow us to dig a little bit deeper. So we do have data though from about 1,600 families. That is about 14% of our families. So it's still a strong number, relatively speaking, in terms of trying to do a census survey. But we typically would like that number to be a bit higher. We do lots of things to try to engage families into taking it. We do have the survey in 3 languages, English, Hmong, and Spanish. We deploy the survey using Skyward email addresses to all families and send many reminders. We try to keep it open all the way through the school year. So it was open from February all the way into the 2nd week of June. So we do have a lot of opportunities where we try to engage folks, but I think that it's one of the messages we have is maybe a time for maybe a little shake-up in terms of getting the data in a different way, and then trying to recommit to people that it won't take too long to take the survey. One of the things that has done to us, though, is it actually trimmed some of our comparisons in the past, because we've taken some things out that we really can't do any, it's shortened some of our longitudinal comparisons, so we'll share that with you in a moment. Again, why we measure family engagement, and you know one of the 5 strategic priority areas for the district is family and community partnerships. And the district's multi-level system of support as well has 4 foundational areas, one of which is the family partnerships. And so one of the things that we've been learning in the past few years through the ESSA and Title I requirements is really that emphasis of families and parents are the first educators of their children. We are along to support that journey and have a significant role, but we really have to partner with families in a way that's different than what some of our strategies have been in the past. Part of those family partnerships as well, we'll be talking a little bit about principals and their role leading their leadership teams in the school improvement planning process. With the multi-level system of support, what we've done is we've actually adjusted the school improvement planning process to deliberately isolate family partnerships to ensure that that's part of their plan rather than having it be hopefully part of the plan. There's actually a section there that drives our teams towards making that consideration. So the other part is the survey still does provide us feedback opportunities, We have found that there are different ways that people react to the survey, and one of those we'll be talking about with our Family Advisory Council when Ann Hartman gets up and speaks with us soon. So some of our actions taken are around educating the whole child, and one of the things that the feedback we've gotten is that people are wanting their children to feel connected to our schools. So some of the things we've done: dual immersion, language immersion, the virtual schools, dual credit opportunities, the Hmong culture, language or history and culture class, the summer school Hmong language class. Some of those things are done from the feedback we've received both through the survey and other avenues with our families. It also, in terms of educating the whole child, has driven us towards trying to make a more deliberate braiding between the academic and behavioral world for a multi-level system of support. So we have committees now that we didn't have before: Social Emotional Learning Committee, which has done some really excellent work over the summer and leading into the summer. We also have some really strong teams trying to braid that academic and social emotional work. So when we bring together our math team, our English language arts team, our science teams, these groups are not just talking about academic content anymore. They're really talking about that connection of students in a way that we haven't heard in the past when those teams have met. We also have the data. So tomorrow, our principals, you heard about the principal retreat, they'll be coming together, they'll be getting their data, and then they'll be working again, as we mentioned earlier, with these, working on those specific strategies in their school improvement plan. So this slide is one that, as a community, always, I mean, this is what Eau Claire is really known for, is their connectedness to their schools and relationships with one another. The two bars on the right are bars that are fixed. That's the National Gallup overall perception of educational quality, which you see across the nation. We have much higher performance here. Ours is at 83%. And the question is would you, how many of you would you give your school an A or B? And we have 83% of our respondents have said yes to that question. That number has stayed relatively consistent. It fluctuates a little bit, but usually about 1 or 2%. The 80% was the survey of the community when we last went to referendum, and that number was at 80, so a little bit less than our families, but still really strong. And so when we compare ourselves again to that national average, we're really strong, and really our community sees itself, the district and the school, as a strong connection for them. So in summary of our data, like I said, because we shortened the survey, the number of things to compare longitudinally with the last year has shrunk. So we have 5 major categories, and if you look, the parenthesis is just the strategic priority area. And so you can see that the variation hasn't been significant, but just to give you a little bit of idea, we would like to see all of these at 80% or higher. So the first 2 we've been pretty strong, but we recognize that the last 3 still need some work. But to give you an idea, the strongest performance in each area is, I'll give you the example of the question just to kind of paint a picture for you. Under academic support, the question was the score the highest was: this school has high learning standards for all students. And so you can see that one scored very high. For student support, there's a teacher, counselor, or other staff member to whom a student can go to for help with a problem. The third one, the one that scored highest, and typically when the percentage is about 1 to 3%, we don't really, we start to wait for that percentage to get a little bit higher. So one that had a 4% gain, which we felt pretty good about, was under safety and behavior, was the school is safe. If you think about the efforts we made in the referendum about secure entrances, about our protocols, and actually that's tied with another one that scored quite well. Another area in safety and behavior that increased by 5% was all students are aware of safety and security procedures. So as a board, the way you voted in terms of and led the referendum and the work that's been done, the idea of security and safety has grown pretty significantly since even just last year. For principal leadership, the one that scored the highest is principal makes decisions that are in the best interest of students. And the strongest one in family engagement, our families are encouraged to attend school-sponsored activities such as back-to-school nights. In this area, customer service continues to be an issue for us, even though the board has taken action to address that. One area that had a larger drop, it was a 4% drop, was that the school uses family input to improve instruction. So that was an area that we saw actually decreased in the last year, as opposed to the other two under safety and behavior that we saw as increases. One of the questions we also ask is how families want, or how they currently get information, and how they want to get information. And so you can see there's a pretty strong correlation. They want to get it via email. They're still not quite wanting us to Snapchat it, so that's all right. The school newsletter is the second strongest, and you can see it's the second strongest area where they want to get it. I always chuckle at the next one. They get it from their child, but they're not as eager as the way they currently get it. And then you go on down the line. So you can see the connections are pretty close in terms of the match. So we feel pretty good about that part as well. So one of the ways that we use the data and some of the feedback is with our Family Advisory Council. So we asked Ann Hartman if she would join us just to give the perspective from a parent that sits on that council, that receives information and has the opportunity to give feedback to us. And just like our last example with Amanda and Lisa, it's one perspective, but at least is a little bit more of an insight in terms of from the family perspective about how the data are shared and the ability to have influence with the district. So, Ann.
Thank you for asking me to do this tonight, Jim, and Dr. Hardebeck for having your confidence in me as well. I want to share a little bit of my background as to how I ended up on the Parent Advisory Council, or now the Family Advisory Council. My children all went to Crestview Academy, private K-8 school, and my son came to me in 7th grade, and he's my middle kid, and he said, I really want to go to South. And it was hard for us, but we said, okay, you can go to South. And I knew right away that I wanted to get involved, because when you're a parent at a small school where it's private and there's lots of ways you can get involved, they need parent help in every situation, it's very easy. So I was very involved at Crestview up until this last year when my son graduated from 8th grade. So when I got to middle school with 8th grade with Will at South, I just was like, what can I do to be involved? And there aren't, you know, in middle school and high school, there aren't as many ways to volunteer and to get as involved as there is in elementary school. So I joined the Falcon Advisory Council, which is the parent group that has teachers and parents from South on their council. And found myself from that committee on the Parent Advisory Council, which actually was very exciting for me, because as a parent coming from a private school background to the public school, it was a phenomenal way for me to get to know what Eau Claire School District is all about and the great things about it. So I was pretty excited about being able to get some of those questions answered and to be informed. And that's one of the things that we have up here is about being informed, that at the Family Advisory Council, we're informed every month when we meet about different things that are happening in the district. It might be all the parents give reports about things that are happening at their school. And they might be little things, they might be big things. And then Dr. Hardebeck gives us an update about things that are happening, as well as many other things that are brought to us. I think the middle school and for sure elementary reps have a little bit more of a platform to report back to in their schools, whereas for me as the Memorial rep, I don't have a parent group at Memorial that we get together and meet and they share their concerns with me, which is, I have 4 more years at Memorial, and we'll see if maybe I can do something about that. I think it'd be really valuable to have some of that parent input from the high school level as well as the middle school and elementary level. But we'll see if my boys will let me do that. It's one thing when you have boys. My daughter would have been fine, but not my boys so much. Couple of the things that we have done as far as having an influence that were really vital in just being a part of this committee was that Jim came to us and talked to us about how do we get better family engagement in our schools. And so we sat around 3 different tables with different schools represented at each table and talked about the importance of this family engagement and the newly revised policy about how important that is. And then each of our groups, as we got back together in large groups, shared what we had shared in our groups, and at the next meeting we talked about strategies. So just a way for them, for Jim and Dr. Hardebeck to hear what families want out of that and what families think is important. Another thing we did that I thought was really good was they brought the school calendar to us, the proposed school calendar for, I believe it was 2017-18, and talked to us about what our thoughts were. And we had a great input on that, and then the next year they came back to us, and I think that was even more valuable the next year because we learned a lot of things. We learned that there are 6 days that are required for planning for the district. That we learned also that the consolidation of an extended break was a professional development instructional plan that we moved a day, or they moved a day, to make one of the weekends a longer break instead of being separate little days here and there. And I think a big thing that came out of that too was that many parents expressed the difficulty in when you have kids at different schools, but each school might have a different planning day, and not all the schools have off on the same day, and how difficult that is for working parents to find childcare for their younger kids, and their older kids are in school, and they can't, make it all work. So I think that that was very valuable to have that input from the parents that are on that council. Again, as the memorial rep, I don't necessarily always feel like I have somebody to go back to and say something. It's always in our newsletter that if you have something you want to share with one of your memorial Family Advisory Council reps, please contact them, and our information is in there every week. And I can honestly tell you that not in once in my 5 years now being on this that have I been contacted. But I still enjoy it because I love understanding what's happening, and I love understanding what goes on behind it, and I love being explained all those things. And it's also given me the opportunity to be the representative for FAC on the Demo and Trends Committee, and that's been a really interesting committee to be a part of too, especially coming from, again, a private school background where my kid, I chose to send my kids a long way away from where I live to school, and now hearing some of the things that happen when it comes to like families having to, realize that they might not be able to go to their neighborhood school, or that boundaries are changing. So I think it's a great opportunity for people to represent their school, to represent their families, and I just thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Do you have any questions for me, or I can track Ann down if you need her as well?
First, thank you, Mrs. Hartman and Jim, for the presentation. Now, questions? Commissioner Luginbill?
Curious with my microphone's being weird. I'm gonna just talk into yours, because you don't want to hear the static. I'm wondering with the family climate surveys, did we just have one, or we're about to have one?
We just finished it in the spring, so it completed the second week of June.
And it's every other year, correct?
We've done it every year, but we're considering now waiting and not doing it the coming school year, but doing focus groups and then following it the year after with another survey again.
Okay. I think one interesting question in the focus groups might be, and this is just something I've been curious about, is if we can kind of look at kind of specific subsets of families that we serve and break things down a little bit more, so we can have a good idea of whether it's in the areas of family engagement or safety or support from the school, looking at are there other ways to look at it, like and then I think that'll help us with specific strategies for example, families of color,
right,
or families who've been served by other programs in the district. I think just I think about like the census, for example, and all the questions that the census asks to gain a good idea of what households are like in our communities. And so I wonder if that would be a question in the focus groups, of maybe additional questions that people would like to be asked to identify, not themselves personally, but identify kind of their experiences or where they've come from.
Thank you. Yep.
I have a question. In the item about principal leadership, it looks like 1/3 doesn't agree or strongly agree that there is a good result there. What are the items that seem to be the weakest?
This is where I should be able to quickly find it for you, but.
And while you find them,
sorry.
is there any plan to address those?
The principal resolves conflict that arise between parents and school staff members in a professional manner is the one that scores the lowest. And so, yeah. That's always a tricky one too, because sometimes to tease out, and I think a focus group could help us, because sometimes some people don't like the outcome of the decision or that's made versus how it was handled. So that's probably something that we could, in a focus group, dig into a little bit deeper. Typically with a focus group as well, we would look at questions like this, the ones that score lower, as a starting spot for an opportunity to dig deeper on questioning, so that we can learn more from families, so they'd have a chance to expound on, is it because it wasn't the answer they wanted, or was it because of the process? So, that's one of the things that a focus group can do for us.
Thank you. Any other question or commentary? Commissioner Vu?
I don't know if this question is appropriate for this presentation, but I'm curious as to if teachers have feedback from somewhere else and not here. Because if I'm a teacher, I want to know how I am perceived by the families.
Right, and this survey doesn't correlate an individual teacher with that response to from a family member. So we don't have the ability to make that connection through this process.
Do we have other survey to find out how family perceive teachers in general in the district?
You mean like individual teachers?
No,
Oh,
educators.
Oh, so for example, there are questions within the survey. So for example, teachers set high expectations for all students. So it's very specific. We'll address that. There's questions that would say, something that the school does, but there are questions that specifically address a teacher's perceived performance by the family member. Does that answer your question?
My short question is, if I am an educator and I think I'm doing my best, I want to know how my best is perceived by parents.
Right. This isn't the tool for that, though. That would be the supervision process with the principal.
We don't have, as a district, picture.
Of an individual teacher in terms of how
No,
families
as
perceive
the district teachers.
Well, but again, you could look at an individual question that is specific about teachers. So for example, on this particular one, teachers set high expectations for students. We know that 86% of families either agreed or strongly agreed with that. Or am I misunderstanding your question?
I'm not sure how to do it, but I use my own example. I run a summer program every year, and I want to know if my students perceive my staff being strong, working well, and delivering the service to the students. And every year I try to bring that perception higher than what the year before.
Right, so the buildings the principals will receive an individual, they'll get a breakout by building of the responses. So that question, for example, about teachers setting high expectations for students, each school will receive how families from their school responded to that question. So they will be able to see that for their site.
Commissioner Vu, are you asking for feedback to individual teachers about how they are perceived, or how teachers in a particular school are perceived, or teachers throughout our district are perceived?
I believe I'm looking at the district strength. It was a board's interest to see how community and the district partner in educating kids. And if the district doesn't have a data as a whole, it would be hard for the district to improve educators' influence of their children.
So one of the things that we might be able to work with our survey company about is to look at questions that specifically address teacher performance and the perception of teacher, high-quality staff, and be able to put some, maybe some report together for you to give you some sense of, it would be very global and general, but it might give you a sense of how the families who responded to the survey are feeling.
Thank you.
Commissioner Luganville?
I just wanted to thank Ann for coming and for serving on 2 committees in the district. That's extra special, so thank you. And I also just wanted to, I guess, reiterate how important it is that we have a strong family advisory council in our district. And I know on all of our materials about the council, we talk about that the council, they're there for many different reasons, but one of them is to bring recommendations to the school board. And that's something that I think I would like to see more of, just as an individual board member, is I'd like to see more opportunities for the Family Advisory Council to come, maybe a couple times a year, around specific topics. Perhaps they have ideas on school safety, perhaps they'd like to talk to us about mental health. I think there's a variety of topics that parents and family members could speak to with us and provide those recommendations, even if they're more broad in nature, just to help frame our discussions as a board, to know where our families are at. So I think that might be a good thing to add more opportunities for that on our school board calendar.
I think the last meeting they actually had in May, we actually were looking at, there's a movie called Ripple Effects, which is about suicide, and they actually did a trailer and a trailer of the movie and did a whole discussion about how we might use that in the district in terms of timing and the different forums and so forth. And they had the ability in that group already to shape our practices for next year, aside from coming to the school board. So it's a pretty energetic group. I mean,
that's great.
They do a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or commentaries? If not, then we are going to receive this report and move on to the next item. Thank you very much. Technology update and one-on-one refresh proposal.
So James is going to join me to, I'm going to do the beginning of the presentation, and he's going to get a bit into more of the details about our update and the refresh proposal of our devices. So again, we always like to try to tie back the strategic plan, and really we'll talk some specifics about how our technology supports academic achievement and social emotional growth, and how it creates a collaborative culture both with our staff and with our students. It was interesting, this presentation gave me a chance to dive back into the tech plan back in 2015. It's the last time that we were required to have a technology plan. And even back then we were talking about multi-level systems of support and really looking at high quality instruction and giving students an opportunity for 21st century tools and in a safe, responsive and supportive environment. So that includes everything from having technology to engage in learning, to having the filtering in place to protect students so that when that Google search could go awry, it doesn't go in directions that we would not want to see it. Also around balance assessment, and this is really where our devices, from a compliance perspective, not even just trying to be 21st century, but from a compliance perspective, to be able to administer state required exams, they have to now be done. I remember the days when we used to get boxes and there was the bubble sheets and all that. We've shifted to an entirely online environment for pretty much everything that's a state mandated test except for the ACT at grade 11. But in terms of monitoring student progress in Skyward, we have a data warehouse that we've talked to you about before, and really using our learning management system, which in this district is Canvas, like the UW system, is really a way for us to monitor the progress of our students. And that's a choice that we make in terms of the tools that we choose as a district. However, I don't know any district that would go without some of them, because it's pretty much impossible to run a district without a student information system like Skyward. But also the state mandated testing, as I mentioned, so the FORWARD, the dynamic learning maps for our special needs population, the access test, which is for our English learners, the ACT Aspire, not the ACT, but the ACT Aspire for our students in grades 9 and 10. And also, there's a state requirement that we do academic and career planning for our students. And part of that, the state statute requires that the state provides software, which used to be called Career Cruising. It's just got rebranded. It's still the same thing. It's called Zello. And so that has to be done on a platform, electronic platform as well. So the expectations are that we live in a world that is digital for our students. We also have our chosen assessments that are done electronically, which is, you may have heard of the STAR and ACT Aspire interim, not the one that's required by the state, but we have an interim assessment as well. But if we think about the vision for the district, back in 2015, we had a committee that came together, and they actually bulleted out 13 different vision pieces, everything from technology as a tool to enhance learning, to infrastructure, hardware, and software to meet reliable, user-friendly, integrated systems that are up to date, to having an awareness and sensitivity of the different levels of access to technology in the home. So we were looking at everything from being able to run our systems and protect them, to recognizing that at some point our students are going to be accessing technology when they leave us. So James is going to walk you through a little bit about our history in terms of what purchasing has looked like to support that, and sort of the cycle that we're in, and then some of the details of the costs that are in front of us.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, board. So the history of deploying devices into our students' hands is up there. The large chunks that we've done is up there in a table for you. The 3rd and 4th grade students in the 6th grade at DeLong and the instructional staff to support those students were the first batch of iPads that we deployed back in the fall of 2013. Then in 2014, we did the 5th grade students for all of our schools, and then 6th grade at North, Star, and South, and then some additional instructional staff. And then also that fall we purchased Chromebooks, and we deployed those into primarily English classrooms at the high schools, so they had a one-to-one assignment within the English classrooms. And then there were some additional ones on carts that were able to support learning in different places throughout our high schools. Then in 2016, we invested in some HP Streams. HP Streams are a Windows 10 laptop, so it can do everything that the Chromebook can do, but it can also do things that we only have Windows apps for, or some other pieces websites that work better with different browsers where your Chromebook only has a single browser. So it is a more versatile choice for us. It also allowed us to connect up certain additional items like probes from our science program, where we use probes for measuring different effects on items. And this Chromebooks do not support that, but the HP Streams did. So another reason why we looked at a different model and the right product for the right purpose there. Then we did a refresh in the fall of 2018. We came to you last summer and asked you to approve a purchase of some refreshed iPads, some new iPads to replace that very first generation. And that's the highlighting that's up there in yellow. So the very first deployment of iPads was refreshed with the second line of yellow, the 3rd and 4th grade students, and then our 6th grade at DeLong. And so that is what we've come to use so far to do. The highlighted in green is what our next step would be. So we're looking at refreshing the devices at our 5th grade students across the district, the 6th grade at North Star and South, and then also that first batch of Chromebooks that we purchased. We're looking at moving forward with those with a refresh of that. Part of the why that we get into that, so Jim identified some of the reasons why we need to use these devices, and they're helping us both meet the compliance end of the spectrum and the engagement end for our students. But we're at a point where the age of the devices, ideally, if things were in the best condition we could have, we would be doing a 4-year refresh cycle. And we've pushed these out to a 5-year refresh cycle, and that's about the limit that the manufacturer will guarantee them. In fact, Google has indicated that those Chromebooks that we bought in 2014, as of last month, are no longer going to receive future updates. That doesn't mean that they're still not functional, and we intend to get all the use out of them that we can. It just means that they no longer guarantee that they will continue to operate safely and securely. We have other things and measures we put in place to keep that safe, but we know we start running a higher level of risk. And more importantly, when we work with our state testing company, DRC, which writes the forward exam, they have indicated that once the manufacturer no longer supports the device, they will no longer support the device as a device that we could actually give the assessment on. So it forces our hands a little bit. So both the iPads that we asked for a refresh last year had hit that 5-year mark, and Apple had discontinued support of that iPad with the current operating system. This year we have the Chromebooks that have discontinued this summer, so going forward we'll have a challenge with that, and that is helping drive our refresh plan. So the current needs that are listed here sort of summarize where we're using and asking to use some of the technology funds for this district. At the very beginning, at the top, we have the devices, and the $645,000 is specific to those green highlights from the previous slide. So we're looking to refresh the iPads for 5th grades across the district, then also the 6th graders at DeLong and North Star, and then to do a quarter of the Chromebooks with the Windows laptops. We're looking to move forward with the Windows laptops because of the versatility that they offer us. And so that is a quarter of what we have deployed right now at our high school. So that's that top bullet of $645,000. It breaks down to about $400,000 for the iPads and about $250,000 or $245,000 for the Windows 10 devices that we're looking at. The second item, safety, and the third item, infrastructure, is to just help highlight to the board that when the referendum was passed and there was funding set aside and allocated, we went to the public and we said we have some very important needs that have to do with infrastructure for maintaining this district and also for safety of our students. And we identified those items, and so we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. All along the way, we have been using some of the referendum funds to help us with those specific targeted purchases. And in this last budget that we're bringing forward right now, we have identified about $439,000 worth of items that are related to student safety in different ways. Informacast up there is an emergency broadcast system that connects our administration to each other and allows us to get alerts for things that happen in other buildings and scramble emergency response teams on site, as well as getting out to 911. The public address systems are those PA systems that help monitor student safety in event of any type of an emergency. And the infrastructure piece, the $1.27 million, so not only is it those specific really hard pieces that you see there, like the wireless infrastructure for our wireless access points, the filtering that Jim mentioned, the network switches that run in the background, and those other items, but it's also some of those items that we just need to do business, like Jim highlighted, Skyward. How can we run a district? What's the infrastructure of our student information system? It's Skyward. We have to run the district and use an information system of some type, so that's part of that core infrastructure that we're using. So that's just to give you a picture of all the things that are behind that $1.7 million. So our ask of you is to come to you in another 2 weeks and look for funding for the $645,000. We know that it's a time-sensitive item. If you can approve that at the next board meeting, then that allows us to work on getting those devices as soon as possible so we can get them into our students' hands as early as hopefully September, if things move very, very quickly. Probably not beginning of September because there's some processing time, but as early in September as possible. We're bringing this to you now because it's a large budget item, and we know the budget is a complex product that takes a lot of thought and wrangling to get down to a place that you're ready to move forward with it. So we wanted to bring this history to you, the context, and then see what questions we might be able to answer for you as we proceed to hopefully a conversation and a vote next week or next meeting.
I would like to clarify one thing, is that the last two items would actually be part of the overall budget approval that happens in October. It's just the first item, number one, that would be the ask for at the August 19th meeting.
The ask for the number one, that is the budget adjustment to go towards this coming school year. The other two would not be in place until the 2020-21 school year, right?
No, they're actually all in the budget for this year, but since the budget does not get approved until October,
okay.
We knew that that the other items, we could wait for that vote till the approval of the budget in October, but the first one, because of as James mentioned, getting those items into students' hands as soon as possible for the school year.
So this is not, so this first one is not an adjustment to the existing budget?
It's in the budget right now.
It's like an early, okay.
Process. We
Early
need to start early.
expenditure, got it.
Questions? Any questions from the audience? If not, thank you very much. I must say I was out of country a few weeks ago, and I tried to get into the system from abroad. I couldn't, so you're doing a good job. Safety-wise. Thank you. Now we have requests for future agenda items. The agenda setting meets tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Any items? Dr. Bika?
I don't know if this is an agenda item, but I wanted to ask about work session time, but focus on governance structure.
Okay, thank you. Any other item? Hearing none, then I will need a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And a second.
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the Eau Claire Area School Board. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.